Now, I'm not familiar with the case, but somebody told me I needed to see this. This is the mysterious final hours of Damian Nettles. Maybe y'all have heard of it, maybe you haven't, but let's check this one out.
The Isle of Wight, a small, picturesque island about 2 miles off the south coast of England. An area famous for its rich culture and natural beauty. It's a traditional and friendly place where many Brits choose to retire. Home to 140,000 people, in the summer months it's a hotbed for tourists. People flock to the so-called Dinosaur Island, where so many fossils and prehistoric bones have been found, the remnants of the rock's Jurassic past. Nowadays, the landmass is much less ferocious, the only real danger being a feisty red squirrel or a rogue seagull pinching your fish and chips as you walk along the seaside. Or so you'd hope. This was Damian Nettles. Born in Singapore on June 21st, 1980, he and his 3 siblings spent much of their early life bouncing between countries with their English mother, Valerie, and their American father, Ed, before finally settling down on the Isle of Wight in 1990. In many ways, Damian was your typical mid-90s teen. One who loved Doc Martens and rocking out to Nirvana, Blur, and the Beatles. One who enjoyed staying up late and socializing. One who hoped to study marine biology in the future. And one who, in all likelihood, fell victim to a small island's shady underworld. This is the unsolved mystery of Damian Nettles. Are you sick of feeling like your personal information is being bought and sold like a commodity? I sure am. A quick Google search address did it. Or information on spam. More 3 million, /lazy to also linked in the description. It was the 2nd of November, 1996, a cold and dreary day on the Isle of Wight. That evening, a then 16-year-old Damian Nettles slipped on his favourite outfit, a pair of blue jeans, a black sweater, and his signature Doc Martens, and caught a ride with his father Ed to East Cowes, eager to meet up with his best friend, Boon. As he stepped out the vehicle, Ed told his son to be home no later than midnight. Always polite, Damian thanked his dad for the lift, agreed to the curfew with his trademark grin, and set off towards Chris's house. That was the last time Ed ever saw his son. Unbeknownst to either of their parents, Damian and Chris were secretly planning to get drunk together. Now, I don't know about other parts of the world, but in the UK, and most of Europe, that's pretty typical for people their age. Damian and Chris's night began at 7:30 PM when they attended a house party hosted by a mutual friend. Well, this party turned out to be more of a gathering, and so, preferring to spend their night elsewhere, Damian and Chris left at 9:30 and went to a local off-license to buy some booze. The legal drinking age in the UK is 18, but Damian was tall, 6'4" to be exact, and could definitely pass for older than his years, and as such, the pair fancied their chances of not being ID'd. Luck smiled upon them, and they left the store with 2 bottles of Special Red, a strong and cheap cider. From there, the two caught the ferry from East to West Cowes, and witnesses aboard described the 2 youngsters as chatty but not drunk. After arriving on Cowes High Street, the 2 young men hopped from pub to pub, hoping Damian's height would work in their favour once again. Yet, despite their best efforts, they were refused entry to all of them. Though they couldn't rely on Damian's height to get them into any venues, the one thing you can always rely on is the British weather going from bad to worse. Without warning, it began hammering it down with rain, and rather than lurk around outside bars like a pair of drowned rats, Damian and Chris mutually decided to call it a night. They walked together towards Northwood Park, and when they reached the steps, the boys parted ways. That was at 10:30 PM. But though Chris's night was over, Damian's wasn't. He initially set off in the direction of his house, but at some point, he turned around and returned to the high street, bouncing from pub to pub once again. Without the much younger-looking Chris by his side, Damian found it far easier to get inside without being ID'd. Several locals who knew Damian confirmed seeing him inside various pubs during that next hour. One witness even recalled seeing a confused young man matching Damian's description in the Harbour Lights pub car park, attempting to open the door of a blue Ford Fiesta at around 11:15. Damian's hunger eventually got the better of him, and like many young Brits after a night out, he went to fill up on some greasy food. meant winning cows, where better than Yorkie's fish and chip shop. This CCTV footage, captured from inside Yorkie's, shows Damian entering the busy high street eatery at 11:34 PM. The gentle giant can be seen chatting with other patrons before placing his order. Damian was known for being social, larger than life, and for chatting with strangers.
That's what I'm sitting here looking at. I'm like, yo, he's really like, it's like what they would say back in the day was like, that person right there never met a stranger. He looks like that type, to have never met a stranger. Don't mind going places by himself, to which that could also be a detriment. So he doesn't mind it though. And he hasn't done anything that a typical teenager, you and I, if you're older and once was a teen, what has he done that you and I haven't done? Try to score some, as they would say, score some booze. Now, going to pubs and bars, it wasn't happening for me where I was from. You couldn't even try it. You couldn't try it. But over there, it was lax. They told you the age was 18. So this is different, but I'm wondering if him being so nice and outgoing and just social was his demise that night.
But judging from the footage, it looks to me as if his chattiness might have stemmed from the cider he'd been drinking, or perhaps even from a stronger substance.
Oh, he drunk. He definitely, he there, he nice. He not falling down, stumbling down drunk, but he feeling it. Bro, you couldn't even say what type of food you wanted. He said, give me one, and got irritated when the person behind the counter didn't know what one meant. Oh, yeah. Now, y'all can get upset and say, oh, well, why did the friend leave him alone? The friend thought he was going home. They parted ways. I'm thinking you going home. Like, yeah, this is not good at all. He not of sound mind. He can't make no right decisions right now. So he got fish and, I think he got fish and chips. Chips is French fries, right? Am I correct with that? Fish and chips, that's French fries. Fish and French fries, right? I'm guessing because it looked like he was pouring a lot of salt on that. So sometimes you need a little bit of season on your fries. Gotta have season on your fries. I love season on my fries. So I'm thinking that's what he had.
In the mind of the man who served Damian that fateful night, alcohol alone doesn't make you act like that. Damian left the shop at 11:39 PM. Shortly thereafter, he tried to board a bus and asked the driver to take him to Cowes. The driver told him that he was already in Cowes. In response, Damian tried to take the driver's picture with a camera he was carrying, politely thanked the driver for the ride, and then stumbled back off the vehicle. A witness in a stationary car later noticed a young man at the same bus stop, one who matched Damian's description. This young man approached the witness's car, got them to roll down the window, and then nervously whispered, "They're watching us." He repeated this phrase before disappearing down the high street. The last reported sighting of Damian was at 12:06 a.m. as he made his way along Sun Hill in the direction of his home. The streets, at that point, were empty. When the rest of the Nettles family awoke later that morning, they quickly realized that Damian hadn't returned home. That was completely out of character. Valerie and Ed tried their best to contact him, but were unable to do so, and as such, went to the local authorities and reported their son missing. Today, 27.5 years later, Damian's whereabouts and well-being remain a mystery, with this surveillance footage being the last to show him alive. So, what happened to Damian Nettles that dreary night in November 1996? Well, like any missing person case, there are 5 main explanations we can examine. He ran away. He ended his own existence. He had an accident. He was taken. Or he was killed.
Alright, ran away. He wasn't running nowhere that night. He was trying to get home. He wasn't running nowhere. He done got his food in him, trying to sober himself up. Normally at the end of the night, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get some food. You're trying to get a little bit of food to absorb all of that alcohol. So food in you, now you're ready to go home, sleep it off. So him running away, let's remove that. And now, I don't know. This is just my own thought process. Let's remove that one. Taken. Let's leave that there. There's definitely a possibility. Who gets out of the car and says they're watching us? And then leaves down the street. Meaning you must know something about that area. You must, there's some crime that happens in that area where stuff like that happens. So let's leave taken over here. Murder, we can leave that over here too. That to me kind of goes along with taken, or you know what I mean? In that same vein of what's that? Accident, I want to leave that over here too. Because you've been drinking. So you stumbling in a ditch somewhere or falling into something and something happening to water, swamp, gator get you, animal, something, that's a possibility. You taking your own life, I'm going to put that one over here. So I'm going to stick with taking, murder, accident. Those 3. The other 2, I ain't really seeing nothing. He was too good, too nice, too happy, too up. Where did you see the signs that he wanted to do something to himself?
To begin with, the police didn't suspect foul play. When Ed and Valerie told them that Damian hadn't returned home that night, they ignored their urgent pleas for land and air searches, stating that their son had probably just run off for the weekend. Their attitude was so apathetic that they mistakenly recorded Damian's age as 19 rather than 16, making him a missing adult instead of a missing child. When Mrs. Nettles called the station a few days later for an update, she was unbelievably dismissed by officers as a hysterical mother and was told that her frequent calls were obstructing their investigation. Well, it was clear to Valerie and the rest of the Nettles family that Damian wasn't ignoring them on purpose. And besides, on such a small island, where was he meant to have run off to? Word travels fast on the Isle of Wight. Everyone was aware of Damian's name and face by that point, and nobody had reported seeing a distinctive 6'4" boy anywhere. Which brings us to Damian's mental well-being. Those who knew Damian described him as having a zest for life, and no one suspected he was planning to end things. Shortly before his disappearance, Damian had broken up with his girlfriend, Abby Scott, and some believe that he took the breakup harder than he let on. They say that after eating his final meal from the chippy, Damian walked out into the sea, never to return. But Abby herself thinks there's a more sinister reason behind Damian's disappearance. Near the end of their relationship, Damian befriended some unsavory older men, once known to be involved in the drugs trade. Despite its idyllic setting, in the 90s, the Isle of Wight was home to a criminal underworld. One sect was a group of a dozen or so dealers who operated in and around East and West Cowes, the area where Damian was last seen. Many were well-known figures on the island who dealt in every kind of substance imaginable. Among them, Bunny Isles, the island's most notorious dealer, with over 30 criminal convictions to his ridiculous name. Then there was Bunny's housemate and best friend, Nicky McNamara, a violent and unstable man who often got high on his own supply. There was Nicky's girlfriend, Shirley Barrett, a woman with 52 unspent convictions, and who was known to throw used needles at children. And last but not least, Danny Spencer, a friend of the trio who did little for the reputation of British teeth. Damian and Chris did secretly smoke together regularly. That much we know. According to Chris, they often made those purchases from the Dirty Dozen, who typically operated out of Bunny's home. Though Chris hasn't confirmed this, it's suspected that he and Damian were going from pub to pub that evening, looking for a dealer they recognized. Given the reputation of the Dirty Dozen, it wasn't long before word began spreading across the island that dealers were behind Damian's vanishing, though the who, how, where and why changed depending on who you asked. For many years, those rumours remained just that, rumours. Of course such unsavoury types were going to be magnets for such suspicion. But in 2002, 6 years after Damian's last confirmed sighting, someone came forward, not as a speculator, but as a witness. A source, who has opted to remain anonymous, confessed to a team of BBC journalists that he used to deal alongside Nicky McNamara. This source alleged that Damian owed Nicky money for an eighth of pot. Angry about the unpaid debt, Nicky supposedly punched Damian with so much force that he died instantly. The source claims that Nicky then hid Damian's body inside his house for 3 weeks before burying him in Parkhurst Forest. Despite the Nettle family's best efforts, the authorities refused to take cadaver dogs out to that location, citing that the source wasn't trustworthy. A group of
Now, whoa. What do you mean the source wasn't trustworthy? Who gives you the right to determine that? You mean the source? What? You at least check. Now, that's starting to make me think that the police is in on this. How do you not even go check to see? Like, you hear about the places where it'd be like, you know what? Cops is in pocket around here. You got to be careful around here. The police ain't on your side. They not your friends. They not helping you out. They in pocket. They about that. That cheddar, that cheese, that fetty, that guap. They about that. Cause how do you not go? Man, listen, bro. I'm livid if I'm his parents. First, you keep turning me around. Oh, they was turning them around in the beginning. Not even taking it serious.
Local residents came together to try and excavate the huge site. The police denied them permission to do so, but the group went ahead with the dig regardless. Unfortunately, that search turned up no sign of Damian. Which begs the question, was there any truth in that source's confession? Well, perhaps. You see, years later, a separate source claimed to have seen Nicky walking down West Coast High Street at 11:30 PM the night Damian went missing, right around the same time that he would have entered Yorkie's. Supposedly with Nicky were his infamous posse, Bunny, Shirley, and Danny. That timing could, of course, be coincidental. November 2nd was a Saturday night, so Nicky and Damian being in town at the same time doesn't prove that he took the boy's life. The next day, however, the source claims to have seen Nicky burning what appeared to be a black sweater in an oil drum, apparently muttering to himself, "I'm a damned man. I'm a damned man." According to this witness, the smell coming from the drum was like that of burning flesh. Neither of the source's confessions have ever been substantiated, and though they shouldn't be ignored, they should be treated with a healthy dose of skepticism. One thing that could help clear up any doubts would be if Nicky and his cohort were caught on video alongside Damian that night. Luckily, 7 security cameras covered the area along Cowes High Street at the time, and should have captured images of Damian leaving Yorkie's. That same footage may well hold the key to uncovering who exactly he encountered. All of it was collected and handed over to the police to be enhanced. Yet, strangely, the officers working the case accidentally taped over all of it before it could be analysed. Because of one foolish officer's actions, that vital footage has been lost forever. Frustrated with the police's repeated failures and lack of progress, the Nettles family hired a private investigator to look into Damian's disappearance and see whether there truly was a link between him and Nikki McNamara.
That's right. Don't give up. Do not give up. You search for your kid's killers or whatever happened to your kid. You search. You don't give up.
Soon after taking on the case, however, that same PI received a visit from the police himself. They warned him not to investigate the matter. Damian, they suspected, had drunkenly tried to swim the Solent that night, the stretch of water that separates the Isle of Wight from the British mainland. He had likely drowned or froze on his way to Portsmouth, they said, and would probably never be found. Where they got that theory from remains unclear, but as the local fishermen understood all too well, the Solent gives back what it takes away. That is, everything that falls in gets washed up eventually. Damian's father, Ed, even spoke with the harbour master in Cowes, Captain Henry Wrigley. We got the charts out, and I calculated for them the tidal movements, tidal sets, and rate, as well as all of the possibilities in case he had slipped into the water. The Solent is complicated, but it's well charted. I'm certain that had he gone into the water that night, he would have been returned to the land. The harbour master knew that the police's theory was nonsensical. So did the PI. Ignoring the officer's warning, he conducted his own investigation and began by speaking with Shirley Barrett, the girlfriend of Nikki McNamara. Off the record, Shirley told the private eye that Nikki and one other man had picked Damian up that night on Bering Road, drove him to who knows where, and did God knows what to him. But Shirley also told the PI that if he spoke a word of her confession to anyone, she'd have him murdered. That confession actually held some water. In 2005, 10 years after Damian went missing, an acquaintance of Nikki's came forward and said that on that fateful night he had seen Nikki holding Damian up against a wall in West Cowes. Standing by and watching was Nikki's sidekick, Danny Spencer. Could Danny have been the other man that Shirley had alluded to? Many tall tales of what happened to Damian have been passed around over the years. That he was killed while trying to protect a friend, that he was trafficked off the island in a boat, that he was chopped up and turned into fish bait. But the only one that stood the test of time is that Nikki McNamara was in some way responsible. Nikki himself would never escape that suspicion for the rest of his life, not that he had to live with it for long. He died in 2002 from an accidental overdose. Well, one that was a ruled accidental. Heroin.
He couldn't cope with it. It was eating at him. Remember, they said he was mumbling something under his breath when he was burning the sweater or the jacket or whatever it was. And he was saying like something like he was doomed, a doomed man or something like that, whatever he said. But that OD speaks of it bothering him, it getting to him. It was too much to handle. He know what he had done.
Had been injected into his back, and he was found in his girlfriend Shirley's bath. Her place was known locally as the House of Death due to the number of people who had OD'd there. By the time Shirley found Nikki, he had been dead in the bath for several days. She had been in the house the entire time, but was apparently so out of her mind that she hadn't noticed him. Despite Nikki's demise, to this day, nobody has mustered up the courage to come forward with credible information about Damian's disappearance, and those who have spoken up have done so unofficially and anonymously. As far as I can tell, Nikki's friend, Danny Spencer, still lives on the island. According to those who know him, when he's drunk, Danny often talks about Damian Nettles, the boy who went missing all those years ago, and allegedly repeats the phrase, "If there's no body, there's no crime. No body, no crime." Somehow, and the mind boggles at this, Danny's been able to get his hands on the confidential witness statements which throw suspicion on both him and Nikki. Whether he's used that information to intimidate those who try to speak out against him remains unclear, though it's worth noting that at least one witness has since retracted their statement. The authorities did question Danny, but released him without charge due to a lack of evidence. 7 other arrests have been made since then too, but nobody has ever been charged in connection with Damian's case. The police kept no logs or recordings of any of their interviews with the suspects. Given that he was with Nikki on the night of November 2nd, 1996, journalists have since spoken with his former housemate, Bunny Arles, a man rumoured to know what happened to Damian. Bunny denies having ever met the boy. And that's despite Damian's best friend, Chris Boon, admitting that they used to score from him. Safe to say, Bunny likely knows more than he's letting on. As for the police, Valerie Nettles has described their management of the case as lackluster, shoddy, and pitiful. From the force's viewpoint, they've invested 20 years into the investigation, have taken 357 witness statements, and reviewed over 2,500 documents. But given how ineffective their investigation has been thus far, there are many who suspect that there's something larger at play here, and that everything is not quite right on the Isle of Wight. It would later come to light that the police edited this video from inside Yorkie's, removing a portion which showed a police car passing by the window. Question is, why? Though their complete mishandling of Damian's case could be chalked up to incompetence or inexperience, it's hard not to contemplate an altogether more sinister explanation. That they fumbled the case intentionally to protect either Damian's killer or themselves. But to protect myself, I have to say, that's all speculation. Damian's family would later leave the Isle of Wight and move to Dallas, Texas, citing that the island now held too many painful memories. On the 27th anniversary of her son's disappearance, Damian's mother Valerie spoke with News on the Wight. "We're still hopeful that one day we'll have some finality to this case. In the meantime, that's a dream. The reality is we live in this world of missing persons, surrounded by families like ours, waiting for answers, suffering ambiguous loss as they live a life not fully engaged in the present, but lost in the past." A staggering 6,000 people are reported missing every week in the UK. The vast majority are found within 48 hours. Some, like Damian, remain lost for decades. Some are never found.